Well, it strikes me much of Britain is going to grind to a halt this week. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, there's paralysis of a different kind. The Stormont Assembly is not sitting because of the wrangling over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Now, the government has started moves to change it without the agreement of the EU. The European Commission says the UK is breaking international law and has started legal action. There's even talk of a trade war. But the Prime Minister says the protocol needs fixing to get Northern Ireland's government up and running again.
What it does is it creates unnecessary barriers on trade east-west. What we can do is fix that. It's not a big deal. We can fix it in such a way as to remove those bureaucratic barriers, but without putting up barriers on trade moving north-south in the island of Ireland as well.
Boris Johnson earlier this week. Well, Ireland's Prime Minister, the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, joins me now from Cork. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, the UK is suggesting red and green lanes to remove costs and paperwork on goods moving within the UK, but preserving full checks on goods entering the EU via Northern Ireland. What is wrong with that idea?
Well, first of all, the unilateral decision of the British government to bring in legislation to undermine or to give the power to undermine almost all aspects of the protocol is not acceptable. It represents unilateralism of the worst kind in terms of honouring and adhering to international agreements that governments adhere to and sign up to and ratify in their parliaments. We accept fully there are legitimate issues around the operation of the protocol, and we believe with serious sustained negotiations between the European Union and the United Kingdom government, those issues could be resolved. But what I would say is that the legislation that is published does much more than you are suggesting, because it effectively would be severely damaging to the Northern Ireland economy, particularly in the context of the dual regulatory standards approach now being put forward by the British government, which is deeply concerning to industry and to businesses in Northern Ireland, and in effect represents a form of economic vandalism on Northern Ireland, because if you look, any objective data is now showing that Northern Ireland economy is doing very well. Manufacturing is doing very well. The dairy industry, the meat industry, the food industry generally, and agriculture is doing very well. There are certain areas where we can improve the protocol, and we should continue to do that. What,
though, I mean, on the specifics, the details, why would that plan that the UK government is putting forward not work? Because it is not that far away from the ideas that the EU came up with about trusted partners and fast-track lanes. It's not that far away. What is wrong with the UK's plan?
That specific issue that you reference in terms of goods going to the Northern Ireland from the UK, that specific proposal is one which the European Union is ready to negotiate with and on with the United Kingdom government. But the European Union is waiting for the United Kingdom to get engaged in substantive negotiations. Ultimately, that's the only way this can be resolved, is through substantive negotiations between the European Union and the United Kingdom government. And in our view, issues of the kind that you have referenced can, of course, be dealt with and negotiated. But of course, the legislation introduced last week and published last week is far wider than that, and is very, very worrying in terms of the actual damage it could do to key sectors of the Northern Ireland economy that has been doing quite well under the protocol. And I feel that story about the sectors of the Northern Ireland economy that are currently doing well is not being articulated enough within the United Kingdom. And I would urge people in the British government to talk in more detail with Northern Ireland business, with the Brexit Business Working Group, the people in manufacturing and different sectors of the economy.
The EU Vice President, Maros Sefcovic, says that if the UK passes this bill that is putting in process now, then Northern Ireland is going to lose access to the single market. Is he right?
Well, if this bill is enacted, I think we're into a very serious situation. But of course,
would it lose access to the single market, though?
No one in the island of no one in Northern Ireland and no one in the island of Ireland wants Northern Ireland to lose access to the EU market.
Is that what would happen?
And I think that's one consistent thread. Well, I think if we have a complete unilateral reneging on an international agreement that the United Kingdom government itself signed up to and recommended ratification to its parliament, which its parliament subsequently did, then of course we're in a very serious situation. But we want to avoid that. Nobody wants a trade war in any shape or form. We want this resolved. We believe it can be resolved with goodwill. And I've met all of the political parties in Northern Ireland. I've met with industry in Northern Ireland. We believe we know where there's a landing zone to resolve issues around the operation of the protocol, to give Northern Ireland the best chance in terms of access, obviously, to the European Union market and the UK market, of course. And that would position Northern Ireland well in terms of inward investment in companies like Almac, a global biopharma, now adding 1,000 jobs because of the Almac advantage, which is the protocol. Indigenous companies like Dale Farm, Wrightbus, for example, winning a major contract with Cologne in terms of hydrogen buses, and with the Republic also in terms of the future. I think there are great opportunities here for business and jobs in Northern Ireland, which needs to be acknowledged now.
You've talked about the legality.
Hasn't been to date.
You've talked about the legality of this, and you say that it is illegal what the government is doing, acting unilaterally. Article 16 of the protocol does allow for unilateral measures, doesn't it, if there are serious economic, societal harms or a diversion of trade. And that is what is happening in Northern Ireland at the moment, isn't it? Stormont is not sitting. The government there is paralysed.
Well, first of all, there's no economic harm happening that would justify the invocation of Article 16, or indeed the legislation that is being contemplated or has been published. I mean, the obvious thing to do is to get into negotiations. The European Union has proven its flexibility, produced proposals last October, which you have said yourself contain a basis to reach a resolution with the British government. But what now needs to happen is really substantive negotiations between the British government and the European Union. Maros Sefcovic is a very flexible person. He has pushed the boat out significantly. He wants a resolution. President von der Leyen wants a resolution. President of the Council, Charles Micheál, wants a resolution. The British government is saying, the Prime Minister is saying, he wants a negotiated settlement, preferably. Well, then let's get down to it. Let's get involved in discussions. Unilateralism has never worked in the context of the Good Friday Agreement.
You say how flexible the EU is being, but at the moment the actual protocol hasn't been fully implemented, has it? And businesses in Northern Ireland don't want it to be fully implemented. The European Commission says it has to be fully implemented. That's not flexible, is it?
Well, I think the European Union has been flexible already. You've just said yourself that aspects of it haven't even been implemented, given the fact that the European Union has been flexible and has wanted to create an environment to get into serious negotiations.
And business doesn't want it to be implemented.
But I would have to contest the assertion. Well, hold on. I mean, who are you talking to in business? I would invite you to talk to the manufacturing sector in Northern Ireland. I would invite you to talk to the food industry in Northern Ireland.
Well, the Northern Ireland
Business
I would invite you to talk to the agri-food sector
in general.
The Northern Ireland Business Brexit Working Group says we've always been clear that full implementation of obligations under the protocol was going to present great challenges.
I have met that Brexit Business Working Group. They are very, very concerned with this legislation because it is damaging and would be damaging if implemented to key sectors of the Northern Ireland economy. And there really is an obligation on the Foreign Secretary and the British government to engage with that group. And I've said that they should be involved in the nuts and bolts of any resolution of this. We agree with them, with that group, in terms of issues that do arise from the protocol. We've always acknowledged that. We believe there are issues around the operation of the protocol that affect a small minority of business in Northern Ireland. We should resolve those. There's a way to resolving those. We are open as part of the European Union to resolving those. But do not underestimate the damaging impact of this legislation on sectors of the Northern Irish economy that has been doing very well. I mean, manufacturing at the moment has had its best year in 19 years. 19 years, it's had its best year this year. And people are trying to suggest that somehow the protocol has been damaging. I mean, there's 90,000 jobs. It's an increase of 2.5% in its performance.
You've mentioned the word...
we need to get real here in terms of what the reality is on the ground in terms of key sectors of the Northern Ireland economy.
And talking of reality...
Certainly anything we do should not undermine it. Yeah.
Talking of reality, you've already mentioned the word trade war. There's not really going to be a trade war between the UK and the EU at this point in time, is there, given what is going on and much bigger issues, Ukraine, the cost of living crisis? We're not really looking at a trade war, are we?
Well, I think you may have referenced a trade war initially. I certainly don't want a trade war. Nobody wants a trade war. That would be very damaging to all of us. the United Kingdom, to Ireland, to the European Union more generally. And as you say, there are far more significant issues in terms of the war on Ukraine, which is deeply damaging and horrific, brutal war. And I pay tribute to the United Kingdom government for the role that it has played in supporting the Ukrainian government. And the European Union, the United Kingdom, the United States, all of the democratic world need to be aligned on the fundamentals of maintaining a multilateral rules-based order. And that's essentially is what is at stake in terms of the war in Ukraine. And that is why we are saying consistently that the issue around the operation of the protocol, and there are issues, and I've said this to the unionist politicians, I've met unionist political parties, there's a way of resolving those, and that way is through negotiations. And the trade agreement and protocol agreement with the United Kingdom government has mechanisms within it to resolve issues that may be negatively impacting on certain sectors of business in Northern Ireland. Everybody is up to resolving those. That's the obvious way forward.
OK, Micheál Martin, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
For many years, and I think you'll make a great Prime Minister.
Gordon Brown, thank you very much for joining us this morning.